Oh, and I think we're live. So welcome everyone. Thank you all for making the time on this Tuesday morning. I've got a great panel for you today on this Sourcr webinar on how to shift your BD strategy to succeed. So this has been a massive response. This has been our biggest webinar we've ever done. It's outcompeted the Greg Savage webinar we did a few years ago. We've had over 950 people register for this. So clearly, that's a testament to the panelists that we've got for you today, but also to the topic. We always do a webinar with some of our award winners post the Sourcr Awards, and this year we wanted to not just talk about the award winners themselves, we'll talk about what they've done in terms of BD strategy in their agencies, as this is what we're hearing from everyone at the moment in terms of how they can adapt their BD strategy to the new market challenges. So before we get into the discussion, the chat is open. We always find the chat is a really useful way for you guys to engage with each other. There will be time for questions at the end, and someone will be monitoring the chat to get those questions for us. But we also find that you guys engaging and asking questions to each other and having discussion in the chat is a really useful way for you to get value from the webinar. So with that, please feel free to shout out in the chat where you're dialing in from today. Someone saying they can't hear sound, so I'm hoping that everybody else isn't having that issue. But please feel free to shout out where you're dialing in from, start the discussion whilst we kick things off. So we've got a great panel who have diverse experience. Let me introduce you to our panelists. So first up, we've got Stephen Carter, so founding partner of Sharp & Carter. In 2009, following a decade in the industry, Stephen founded Sharp & Carter, driven by his core values of respect, care, generosity, and treating everyone with kindness. Over the past 14 years, Sharp & Carter has expanded from a single office in Southeast Melbourne with 2 employees to a nationwide presence with 6 offices and 178 employees. Next up, Laura Frazer, co-founder and managing director of Frazer Tremble. So based in Sydney, Laura's vast 10 years of experience and niche expertise have earned her recognition as a top recruiter, winning the Sourcr Recruiter of the Year award 2 years in a row. Laura's relentless pursuit of excellence and her focus on delivering exceptional talent solutions drive her success and the growth of Frazer Tremble. And finally, we've got Tony Pownall, so founding director of Cultivate. Now 20 people strong, Cultivate was formed only 2.5 years ago with the goal of challenging the traditional commoditized and transactional recruitment model. As co-founder, Tony's priority is ensuring Cultivate lives up to its promise of being a great place to work and a great company to work with, overseeing business strategy and responsible for the impressive growth Cultivate has seen in the last 2 years. So please welcome our panelists. So just to frame up the conversation, we wanted to share some insights from the latest Job Adder State of the Market report, and just really to reassure to the audience that probably what many of you are feeling right now is what's being felt across the market. So the latest Job Adder State of the Market report showed that across Australia, New Zealand and the UK, the percentage decline for perm hires from Q3 22 to Q2 23 was 13%, which is a huge decline. So whilst this may feel like normalized to pre-COVID terms, the decline that we've seen in just a short period of time is going to have a massive impact on agencies. If we also look at the average number of jobs created per agency in Job Adder, so year on year as of Q4 23, so up until June, and looking at the prior year, in Australia, we saw a drop of 8.5%, and in New Zealand, a drop of 7%. So all agencies are feeling these declines. It is happening. And really, that's why we wanted to bring together our panelists today to talk about what they're feeling, seeing and hearing in their agencies and how they're adapting and responding to those challenges. So to kick off the conversation, I thought I might start with what changes have we seen in the market this year? So specifically, how has client behavior changed? And that could be around things like fees, terms, job flow, tenders, and how have you guys adapted? So I might throw that first to Laura. What have you been seeing in the market?
Thanks for kicking me off first. But look, I think, to confirm the stats that you're sort of saying, and it is, we all are experiencing it. But it's never really about what the economy what's happening in the economy. It's all about, strategy, mindset, and execution. Where there's a will, there is a way. And certainly what I'm seeing in our side of things, so we recruit in technology and business transformation, a lot more rigorous recruitment processes, which I'm not adverse to. I actually encourage my clients to do it, and which is pushing out the processes a lot as well, which obviously feeds into your forecasting for your quarters. So definitely seeing that, and a massive uplift in clients, really wanting equitable processes, focus on diversity and inclusion. And then also tenders. I think over the last couple of years, we're a challenger brand in the market, and there's a lot of opportunity for us to come in and add value to maybe other panel providers that haven't. So I'd definitely be seeing a lot more uptake in tenders and the ability to get on those panels as well.
Sure. And Stephen, is that what are you seeing obviously in your agency? And you've got a huge agency across multiple areas. Are you seeing some areas outperforming others, and how are you guys adapting?
Yeah, I think generally speaking, I've been in recruitment 25 years, and 2022 and 2021 were the busiest. It was the busiest market I've seen in 25 years. So it was the busiest market in a generation. And I think if you understand that from a client perspective, they were incredibly stressed about how they were going to find talent, and they were very reactive and having to go to all sorts of different avenues in order to get talent into their business, because talent was so difficult to find. And as the market's reverted now in 2023 back to a more normalised market, they are trying to take back some control and be more proactive in the way that they go to market. So we're seeing a big uplift in the amount of tenders that are coming through, because they want to consolidate the amount of suppliers, make sure the messaging to market is consistent and to the standard that they are looking for. We're seeing talent acquisition work on roles a lot more frequently before it comes to agency. They're having to justify a business case before they use an agency, and there's a lot more advertising directly before they go to a recruiter. So it's not anything we haven't seen before, but it is different from the last 2 years.
Yeah, and so for your teams, how are you advising them to respond to that? Where, are you happy to work on roles where TA are working on it at the same time? And what have you seen in terms of how corporates have, they're clearly trying to take control in the tenders. Are they trying to squeeze fees? Like, how are you responding to some of the challenges that corporates might be presenting in those ways?
We haven't seen so much a squeeze on fees as much as we have a tightening of process. In terms of the way that we engage with talent acquisition, we definitely want to be seen as an extension of talent acquisition rather than in competition with talent acquisition. So we aren't looking really to say, well, we won't work on a role if talent acquisition have or has previously. You've got to remain in this market incredibly customer focused. What's good for your customer, and try to work out a way to add value to your customer, accommodating the way that they want to position themselves and engage talent acquisition in their internal process.
Tony, what are you seeing over in New Zealand?
A few things the same, a few things slightly different. So yeah, good morning, Australia, and good afternoon, New Zealand. Good to see so many Kiwis on the call. A few different things we're seeing. So firstly, generally, we're seeing that customers are a little bit more value focused over price. I think we'd all agree on this call, it's a bloody nice thing to see, to get away from that race to the bottom where procurement gets involved and it's all about bid by spreadsheet. So people are actually prepared to pay more, I think, for a better quality service, better outcomes, more sustainable outcomes. I've heard DE&I mentioned already on this call. That's a big focus for us. All the government bids just come and gone for us here. Sustainable outcomes and DE&I was a massive part of that. You didn't really get a ticket to quote until you showed real sustainable change and impact in that area. So basically people are prepared to pay more for a better quality outcome. Bloody good for our industry that they're focusing on that, which is good. The other thing I'm seeing is a very, very start of an absolute AI explosion in two ways. One is all the different offerings and technology coming out to our industry to be more effective and efficient with the way we spend our time. So that impacts us directly. and then indirectly starting to see some changes to roles and thinking differently about the sorts of businesses, sorts of roles needing in businesses as a result of AI and its impact. And the final thing is just some general customer behavior. So the last 2 or 3 years, and I'm sure it's been the same in Australia, there's been a lot of talk about mental health, burnout, cost of living, inflation really hitting people and hitting their state of mind. So we'd all know there's a lot of emotional energy that goes into finding a new job. And we're seeing a lot of hiring managers busier than ever and getting distracted from recruitment. And we need to keep them focused on the recruitment process to make sure that they're engaged to get the right person or they don't lose that person. So there's a lot more advisory to clients on how to engage the talent so that they don't drop off the end of the process. And we're doing a rework for them. So we're having to wrestle that across the finish line more and be a bit more brutal with our feedback with clients to keep them on track. But then equally, we've got to be a lot more of a coach to our talents than ever before. So people are going into this recruitment process with less emotional capacity to give to that process and to present their best selves. So we're seeing people just drift off, ghost us, and are just finding it really hard to show up through the recruitment process. So we've got to help the candidates as well. I just think it's tougher out there than ever before to get on and get through a week, let alone apply for another job. So a lot more advice to both sides. I see our job less about sourcing now. It's a bit of a given. You've got to just know your market, know where to find talent. That's been a given for a while. Now it's selection. It's actually about being inclusive in the way in which you select people. It's about conversation instead of interrogation. But actually our value add is now around the counsel and the consulting we're providing both sides. That's where I think we're earning our money in this market.
And you mentioned the use of AI and technology in the process. Is that from an agency perspective, or are you seeing clients adapt technology that is making them less reliant on external partners?
Oh, look, we don't do technology roles, so I couldn't speak directly on that, but that's probably where the biggest and initial impact we'll see. I hear out there that, very quickly you're going to see less demand for junior developers because you can code on ChatGPT now. So I think that's only just coming now as we sit here, this impact on actual roles. I'm talking mostly in terms of the technology out there right now today to remove some of the manual admin exercises from recruiters, because I think a lot of recruiter success comes down to how we spend our time and how we remove the noise from that time and be more efficient with our return on effort to get better results. So anything that can remove the noise, the admin, the things that slow us down to spend more time with our customers is better. So it's AI as an enabler to spend more time with customers, not AI as a replacement to our interaction with customers.
And what are some of the things that you've been using that have enabled you to remove some of that admin?
We're just touching on it. So there's technology out there now that you can just transcribe a conversation and it just goes straight into your ATS system. So you don't need to take notes. If you're doing a reference check now, that process with all of us that aren't touch typers trying to bash out some notes to the client to send through, you don't have to do that now. There's a summary that'll do that for you automatically. Most of us, I'm sure, will be writing our job ads with ChatGPT. It won't get you a great ad, but it'll get you 70% of the guts of it to finesse and polish and personalize from there. So that's just two little examples. But I think in the next 12 months, we will be dumbfounded by how quickly this will advance.
Okay, moving on to the next area. I want to talk about client acquisition strategies that have been the most successful for you. And so as we've moved to a market where job flow hasn't been as necessarily as easy to come by, we might have all had to adapt our new business development strategies. So I'm interested what you've been doing in your agencies or with your teams to focus on new client acquisition. So what are some of the successful strategies that you've used in your agency? And maybe I'll throw back to Laura.
I think, well, I can certainly talk about what we're doing here at the Frazer Tremble, but I think generally for people on the webinar, it's really understand what you want to be famous for. Like what is your unique value prop and how are you going to bring that to market? And also I think as recruiters, we think the solution is people to our clients' problems. And whilst that is not the problem, that is the solution. So I think your BD strategy should really be centered around who your ideal client needs to be. And that needs to be data driven. Look through all of the existing data that you've got, who are some of your best clients, what are some of the common themes in those clients, and then what does that customer persona look beyond that, and then market to that. And the more you know about your client's pain, much easier it is for you to get them to the solution, which is ultimately people in that sense. So I think it's just a reframe in terms of how you're viewing business development from the first stand. The other thing is play the long game. I've been recruiting for my business recently, and as recruiters, it's very easy to get caught up into the here and now. That might be job chase, it might be reverse marketing of candidates, it might, it's always what's happening right now. And I think just having a really, really clear list of people that you want to target, ideal customers that you want to hit, and a really rigorous process around how you're going to hit those touch points. And also then for the managers to believe in their team. If they've got all of that in place, it's going to take time. And definitely to play the long game within that, because it will play off in dividends. And looking at, and I think Tony sort of touched on this as well, is I don't know about everybody else's markets, but certainly in ours, our clients are our candidates and our candidates are our clients. So building that relationship with your candidates proactively, not reactively, will pay back. Like some of our biggest clients, in the 3.5 years that we've been in business, have been candidates, or they've been referrals of people that we actually have in place, but we've given them such an amazing experience. They're like, they want us to build their teams. So I think feeding that into your business development strategy is really, really important. And then for the leaders to realize that speaking to candidates is not a wasted activity within that too. So that's another thing I would say. Sourcr awards, leveraging that, your social media strategy, being a lot more strategic within that, not just posting for live jobs, and adding value in every single touch point that you can possibly do, has been really impactful for us.
And so one of the things you mentioned there, which I remember doing a webinar about a year ago, and we got into a debate on this topic, which was reverse marketing of candidates. People have different views on this, whether we should or shouldn't do it, and it can be done in very different ways. Are you using that effectively in your agency?
We do it slightly different. Won't give you our secret sauce, but it's definitely a lot more video based, and it's strategic. A good top talent and reverse marketing is and it's done right, is very impactful. Specking out 20 candidates a week, which one person told me, to hit their KPIs, it's just not a good strategy. So if anybody is hanging their hat on this as a strategy, and hey, I'd love to be proven wrong, but I think if any business went back through all of the candidates that they reverse marketed and made a little bit of a percentage of what that actually hit the bottom line, I'd say it's pretty minimal. But hey, that's just my 2 cents on the matter. Yeah. But be more high touch, always, in all ways.
And Tony, what's been working for you over in New Zealand?
Well, we just had our best month ever, actually, which sounds great, but we're only 2.5 years old, so it's all relative. I'll tell you what we're not doing. We're not spraying the market with business development activities. I've been around 20 years in the market. I've seen it happen before. Times get a little tougher. Businesses push harder, push people out the door. The KPIs go up, and it gets desperate. It feels desperate. Clients feel it. It's not pretty. It just ruins our market. And we all get tainted with it. So don't get desperate. We're just trying to, don't get me wrong, we are trying to force ourselves to have a few more face-to-face client meetings, because I think during COVID we got out of practice with meeting face-to-face, and I don't think there's any substitute for building relationships, even if that's a virtual meeting, but get off the call and get onto Teams or hopefully get in an Uber and go and see them. So we are pushing that slightly, but we're doing it in a very careful way with the right customers. But what we are doing and have been focusing on for some time, and we won't change, is have a tangible point of difference. Our industry is sick of recruiters turning up saying we're different. And when challenged by that HR manager or talent acquisition manager to say how, we can't. We stumble and we come up with the same line as everyone else, which is, well, we're personable, we have access to talent, we turn up and take a brief in person. I mean, who cares? You've actually got to do something different. And what we're trying to do, and it's aspirational, is we're trying to be the leader in diversity, equity, and inclusion. Diversity, equity, and inclusion as it relates to recruitment. So we want to lead the market in providing more of an inclusive process that ensures people aren't left at the curb, because the traditional recruitment process has been built for the neurotypical, not neurodiverse. And so we're focusing on that. We're focusing on being more culturally aware, and we're trying to provide a better experience for candidates. That's our point of difference. It allows us to get in with inclusion managers. It allows us to go and train recruitment teams on how to do this, and it adds value, and it's not transactional, and it's not just asking for the job. It's trying to give something first and then hopefully get something back later.
Oh, and Stephen, for you, what's it been like in Sharp & Carter? Obviously running a large agency, and if you have seen those declining volumes that we saw from the job adder report, how have your teams been approaching business development in your agency?
Yeah, Tony and Laura raised sort of great points, and I think I'll be reiterating those points more than adding a huge amount to them. Where we always start is that the days of spraying the market, in Tony's words, and sort of cold calling, they're over. If you go to a customer and say, "Hi, I'm Stephen from Sharp & Carter. I'm great at recruiting senior marketing roles. Can you call me back?" It's a very difficult game to win, and the best place to start for us is, what can you give to your customer before you can give them talent? And it speaks to Tony's point around what is your point of difference, and how can you add value to them, either within their business. How can you help them run their business more effectively and more profitably, or how can you help them as a candidate navigate their career transitions and change of roles? So you have to find ways to add value before you can add value to them by providing talent. Now, that can be a huge amount of different ways. It is often through the candidate experience, and those candidates become clients. You can invest in your customer through holding events with speakers and relevant, other, I suppose, education. And the other thing that we're pushing really heavily within our business is, as Tony said, getting in front of people face to face, because the people have reverted to digital's very efficient, but it's not very effective from a recruitment perspective. So we are really pushing for our people to add value to them in a face-to-face way, rather than in a digital forum.
Are you encountering any resistance to that from clients who might have been used to Zooms and less likely to want to meet face-to-face? Is there any resistance to that, or are clients actually preferring to get back face-to-face to any of you?
It's mixed, but yeah, we are encountering resistance. There's an efficiency to it. People can do it from home. It's easier to get into people's diary. They're only going into their own office 2 to 3 days a week. And you're not going to get 100% of meetings face to face. Sometimes you do have to be responsive to what your customer wants, but as much as possible, we're trying to get in front of people face to face.
Yeah, I think the desire on the client side is there to do face to face. To your point, it's just the logistics, given the fact they're in the office a couple of days a week. We might even end up meeting a client actually at a cafe just down the road from their house instead.
Yeah.
So it's about thinking a little differently in how you do it. There's just one other point I want to raise I missed before, James. I think it's important in terms of what we're focusing right now for BD, fill rate.
Yeah.
I'm hot on it anyway, but we're focusing on it more than ever before. I think in a really busy market, you can get away with a 30-40% fill rate because you've got that many jobs that if you miss a couple, the next few will come through and help you out. I think it's a really dangerous habit to get into. I think anyone should be filling at least 2/3 of their jobs, if not 80% or more. And that's more critical than ever before. So if you've got less roles on, but you're filling 20-30% more than before, then hey, guess what? You're actually net better off. And you're pleasing more customers. So focus on fill rate if you're going to focus on anything at the moment. As I've already said, return on time and cutting all the stuff that doesn't get you any money is really key. And one of the big ones is working on roles you don't fill.
Yeah, which I think is a really valid point. And particularly when times get tough, there can always be that temptation to pick up roles that you kind of know in the back of your mind there are challenges with, but sometimes it's better to have a board full of jobs than not. So I think that's
it's human psyche. We want to feel busy. We want to feel needed. So we collect jobs that aren't necessarily fillable. Yep. And we make ourselves feel busy. I'd rather someone who has nothing on than a whole lot of rubbish on their board.
Something you kind of all touched on in different angles was brand and reputation, and how you're trying to position your agencies in the market with a point of difference. So I just wanted to spend a few minutes diving into that a bit further about how you're planning to leverage your brand and reputation from a business development perspective across the rest of FY24. Maybe I'll throw it to Tony.
Yeah, I mentioned it already. Diversity, equity, and inclusion is just exploding. So what we've picked is an area within that, which is personally a passion of mine and my business partner, which is neurodiversity. I just see it talked about everywhere, and the New Zealand market is well behind in embracing neurodiversity. There's a whole workforce out there that are underemployed or unemployed as a result of their cognitive differences. And we know there is proven time after time evidence that would show that hiring for cognitive diversity, hiring different brains and not hiring people that are like you, is good for culture. It's good for innovation. It improves retention. It's good for the bottom line. And there are things out there we can quote. So it's a really easy story to go into a client saying, hey, you're doing some great work culturally around making this place a psychologically safe environment for people when they're in the building. But have you looked at your recruitment process? Because it hasn't changed in 10, 15 years, and you're still just turning the wheel and doing the same thing. So the problem is there's a disconnect between what you're doing culturally and how you're hiring these people. So what we do is go in and talk quite openly and sharing what we're doing and see if there's anything that they want to pick up on or adopt themselves. Because, you know, what we want to avoid is having a psychologically safe recruitment process for candidates that come through us, and then we throw them over to the clients, which is like throwing them to the wolves. So we want to make sure that end to end, it's a safe environment for candidates to be themselves and to shine and show up and be their best selves, and focus on hiring on strengths rather than hiring to minimize weaknesses, which is what I think a lot of recruitment's been in the past. So that's our point of difference. It's about building confidence in that topic so that any of my guys can go out and talk about it and sow the seed and ask some questions and challenge the client. And that's adding value.
Fantastic. Laura, how are you planning to leverage brand and reputation for business development?
Yeah, when it comes to BD for us, you know, as a challenger brand in the market, and those social proof points are like, I built a business on it. You know, as a social media strategy, it's doing the right thing. You know, as I said before, you know, treating your candidates like you're your clients and vice versa, and really focusing on experience throughout the whole journey. We did a session where we mapped our customer journey and all of the touch points of that, where those friction points were within our BD strategy, and then came up with marketing material on each of those. You know, and that can be stuff like your case studies. It can be obviously the Sourcr awards, the proofs in the pudding. These are, you know, verified testimonials. Like that is the proof. And video testimonials, taking it that next step further. Your capability documents. And for the more junior recruiters out there, sometimes you don't have a lot to hang your hat on, and I get that. But look to your agencies, look to the more senior consultants, and hang your hat on their achievements and insights, and use that as part of your BD strategy as well. Other things that we've certainly been doing is, you know, upskilling on pitching retained and exclusive work, and not playing that numbers game. We ran the numbers for last year, so 80% of the work that we did was either exclusive or retained, and we're looking to increase that. You know, like our fill rate, my consultants, they, you know, it's high touch and low volume for us. Like our fill rate is 97.6%. And it's only because when we say we can do a job, we can do it. You know, so I think play to your strengths, know your niche, and hang your hat on that when it comes to your business development strategy.
Great. Stephen, throwing over to you, brand and reputation. How are Sharp and Carter planning to leverage their brand and reputation for business development in FY24?
Yeah, we've done a huge amount of work on, I suppose, our corporate branding and our messaging to market with our internal marketing team. Source has been a big assistance in that, as Laura and Tony have alluded to. Being able to demonstrate your track record and your experience in recruiting these types of roles is really powerful for your customers. We also do like to work on roles exclusively, but you can't always work on roles exclusively. And just for the people on the call, just because a role isn't exclusive doesn't mean you've done a poor job. And sometimes what the customer wants, and it might not be in their interests, but I just, there are specializations and areas in recruitment where it makes sense to only work on roles exclusively, but there's lots of parts of my business where you do have to work on a contingent basis, and it doesn't make it necessarily, that the recruiters have done a bad job if they are working competitively on a role. But the other area that we're leveraging is we've invested a huge amount in our commercial team that replies to tenders and preferred supplier agreement submissions, because as I stated earlier, there's been a huge uplift in the amount of companies that are trying to reduce the amount of suppliers that they have and re-tender in their talent acquisition space. So we've invested a lot in that area to be able to keep up with the volume, because there's been a huge amount of volume that's come through this year.
Laura, Stephen, you both mentioned around the focus on exclusive work. Has that changed at all as the market softened? Are you seeing less openness from clients to be retained or exclusive as the market softened, or are many of them still sticking to retained or exclusive options in this softer market?
It's more competitive for sure. Absolutely. I can speak to our existing clients where we've got those proof points and they're like, we love you guys, we're working with you, being able to retain all of them. But certainly, we're always looking for new business development. And that's where we'll work a lot of the new business contingently, because they might not know you or it's through a referral and you kind of need to prove your worth. And absolutely, this is your opportunity to shine. What can you do beyond all of the other agencies that you're working with? And we use a lot of video tech to add additional value to our processes for our clients, to show them what our exclusive process can look like. So there's a few little things that we've got up our sleeve to do that. But yeah, absolutely. Like some of our best clients, we worked contingently to start off with, and I'm like, right, let's pump up, let's get on with it. We're gonna deliver this. And then it's asking them, if we do, or should I say when we do, let's do the next 2 roles exclusive. And it's a low risk to the client. So it's a way to get into businesses is still absolutely, I'm not going to turn away work if it's fillable work. Absolutely. So yeah, there's definitely a place for contingent work.
Yeah. Yeah. And for us, James, we're seeing as talent acquisition has taken over more of the processes and controlled that in the way that that's gone to market, often the process looks like we'll work on it for X amount of weeks. If we fail, then we'll give it to 2 agencies to then go external with. So we are seeing more contingent competitive work this year than what we did in the previous 2 years, for sure.
Cool. Last question on this section. I might throw to Stephen first on this one. I'm interested in the common traits that you see from recruiters that are most successful in this market. So your most successful recruiters, what are some of the common traits you see across them in your agency in terms of, could be the way that they operate, the processes they have, the routines they have. What are some of the common things that you see from the top performers in Sharp & Carter?
I think firstly it's worth saying that we've got a group of consultants that have never had to do business development before. They've started in the past 2 years. They've never had to do any sort of outbound work and customer contact work. We've got a group of managers that have never trained anyone to do any outbound work before. And so the transition back to a market that I've traditionally worked in it was never going to be smooth. So for all the people on this webinar, if you're finding it difficult, it shouldn't be a surprise. You shouldn't beat yourself up about it, because it is a difficult skill to develop, this more outbound sort of business development skill set. The people in my business that are the most successful at it, I think firstly, they're the people that have a really strong growth mindset. They don't look at this as a negative. They look at it as an opportunity to grow their skills, to develop in new areas, to grow their market, to speak to more customers, etc. And so they're often the people that are focused and committed to personal growth and their own education, rather than just, their first call that they receive or the first knockback that they receive, they say, well, business development's no good. So, but from there, what the best are good at is just a relentless pursuit in adding value for their customers and trying to find ways to do that to their customers. So, and it's an ongoing daily habit rather than a motivation to do BD. It's part of a discipline that they have, that they do a certain amount of outbound work in whatever format that takes, rather than, okay, I really need to motivate myself to do business development today. It just happens as part of their routine.
And across your agency, are the leaders quite prescriptive in some of that outbound work, or are different teams doing totally different things and different individuals doing totally different things in terms of that outbound activity?
Yeah, it varies between markets about what sort of format and type of outbound work that happens. But I suppose broadly speaking, the metric that I look at is for my people to try and have somewhere between 12 and 15 customer meetings. And those customers could be clients in a traditional client meeting format. They could be day-to-day interviews. But if you can have sort of somewhere up to 3, ideally face-to-face customer meetings a week, you're generally pretty well placed. Now, to get 15 customer meetings a week, you have to obviously do the pre-work to tee all those up, and that means you'll do a certain amount of calls and have a certain amount of jobs advertised. You might have to do a certain amount of reverse marketing, so on and so forth, invite people to events. But if you can get 3 customer meetings a day, that generally sets the best performers up for success.
Right. Back onto traits of top performers. Tony, thrown over to you. What do you see from the top performers in your team? Are there any common traits that you see across them?
Yeah, there is. I was just jotting a few notes down on this as we talked then. Admittedly, we're only 20 strong here, and a lot of us are quite experienced. We've been in the market for quite a long time, which is good and bad. Sometimes it means we've got to change habits. It takes a little harder too. It's a little harder as well. But some of the things I've always seen in terms of top contributors, top consultants, is they're interested and they're interesting. So they can hold a conversation, they're curious, they're genuinely interested in their clients and understanding their business. And we hire for that. And it means they're consultative as well with the clients. They're willing to push back and challenge. They've got what I call anchor clients. So they haven't got a whole lot of rats and mice to make up their portfolio. Most really strong billers have got 2, 3, 4 key clients where they do the bulk of their business, the bulk of their work. The majority of the vacancies will come to them in whatever relevant area. And that's about efficiency, right? So if you can have 2 or 3 big clients, then the rest of your portfolio is made up from sort of more opportunistic stuff, but you don't want your whole portfolio like that. So 2 or 3, 4 big anchor clients. They're consistent with their business development, just always, every day, a little bit. It's don't wait till you're quiet to get the peaks and troughs. They're just always on in terms of business development and just slowly chipping away all the time. They're action orientated and they got urgency. And there's a lot of people that procrastinate with business development. They write lists, they get fancy spreadsheets and they color code it and then they put new columns in. And honestly, it's like a half a day just to work out who you're going to call. Whereas I think the best people just go, you know what, I'm not overcomplicate it. I've got a scrap of paper, I've got some names on it. At the end of the day, I'll screw that bit of paper up and I start a fresh one. And I just, when I need to make a call, I just make it. I just force myself to get on the phone, make the call, move on to the next thing. And yeah, I really admire those people. They just don't let anything get in the way. It's just little bits all the time.
Cool. And and I guess in terms of the specific outbound activity that your top performers are doing, is it outbound cold calling? Are they focused on LinkedIn, email, a combination of all of them? Like, are there any specific tactics that they're using?
Oh, look, yeah, there's no doubt, and a lot of us have been around for a long time, so we're a bit set in our ways, and some of us a bit old-fashioned. We do like to do things face-to-face and on a phone, but there's no doubt there's a place for texts even now and emails, because clients are harder to get hold of during the day. They've meetings, so actually sending an email that they can reply to at night time actually suits them. So I think it's a bit of a combination in terms of the channel for business development, but just not relying on any one channel. And look, it's doing great service with candidates, as Laura said, so that when they're in the role, it's actually following up with them, because quite often a great experience given to a candidate, they get into a role even through another provider and they call you to help restructure their team. So I think I think using candidates as a way to drive leads and relationships is really critical. I think too often we differentiate clients and candidates as being, different. We rack and stack candidates for future needs, and then, we better go and find some work. And actually we should be mining both all the time. So yeah, it's horses for courses in terms of type of activities and quantity though. We'll talk about KPIs in a minute, I think, a little bit more detailed, but I think it really depends on the individual, how long they've been in their desk, what product line they're doing as to what KPIs. But I think face-to-face client meetings is just the key one that we always focus on.
Cool. I want to move on now to talking about creating a scalable, repeatable process for building high-performing teams. And I guess as leaders of your own agencies, what are the key metrics that you're looking at week to week or month to month to look at the health of your business development pipeline for your agency? And I might throw to Laura first.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's how long's a piece of string, and it will differentiate between who we've got in the business and the seniority of that person. But I think it's, as a leader, it's coming with your overall strategy that we're all working towards, commercial goals, what that values is, what our mission is, and working towards that, and then working back to that. So we certainly implement OKRs, which are quarterly, and then we have KPIs that sit within that to get to those OKRs. So everybody, whether you're a junior consultant or whether you're a senior consultant, that's going to vary in terms of what those metrics are. Like certainly I can make 10 BD calls and pick up 5 jobs, and then the juniors are going, my God, what's Lord, you know what I mean? So it's just, you got to keep your team motivated to the skill set and the level that they're at, to be perfectly honest. And those metrics are going to vary. Yes, I agree with Stephen, quality client activity and getting face-to-face meetings and working back from that. But look, if my team met 5 client meetings a week, that were our target audience, that were, going through significant growth, there's at least 2 to 3, 5+ roles in that 12-month period, then that's a great person to be meeting with. But don't discount those coffee catch-ups and those touch points with people that you haven't maybe spoken to in a while as well, because there's a lot of value in that. Then when it comes to more structure, we have a BD playbook. It is, as anybody knows me, I am very process driven. It's like just follow the process and you will get the results. So we've got that BD playbook that you follow, all of the touch points. I think, correct me if I'm wrong, my marketing manager might tell me differently now, but I think it's between 7 and 12 touch points to actually get that meeting. It's great when you pick up the phone and you get the first one, you're like, oh, fantastic. But there's a lot more consistency with that, and just trusting in that process. So that can be your LinkedIn connections, personalized messages, voice notes, text message. It needs to be multi-channeled, a video, personalized video message. We do email marketing, case studies, all of that combined, and at different stages of that customer journey. And the more activity you do in that, the easier it is to move them sort of down that funnel when it comes to BD. But 80% of what you're doing should always be revenue generating activities. Just to Tony's point, creating the beautiful spreadsheets and all of the lists and all that's great to have a bit of a baseline, but you've got to execute, and you've got to be doing that at least 80% of your day and your week to actually be successful long term, for sure.
Cool. Stephen, I'll just quickly throw to you on the same question. Across your agency, what are some of the key metrics that you're looking at week to week, month to month, to look at the health of pipeline for your agency?
As Laura said, it differs depending upon the person and their role. The place where we start is, what are the person's goals? Because for lots of recruiters, they're competitive and they want to be the best, but that's not true for everybody. For some of the people in our business, they want to make sure they're home at 6 o'clock every night to have dinner on the table for their family, and they want to earn a good living, but they don't want to be the richest or the biggest billing recruiter in our business. And therefore, the metrics for that person is different than the person that, I want to be the highest earning consultant at Sharp & Carter. Broadly speaking, we say to our people, you only have to do one of two things with us. You either have to bill money, or you need to be doing everything right to try and bill money. And if you're billing money, we're not going to worry about necessarily, within context or reason, what it is that you're doing to lead to that, because clearly you're doing the right things because you're billing money. And if you're doing all the right things, we're not so much worried about how much money you're billing, because we know it will come in time. And then from there, it's really just, what Laura outlined in terms of how you engage with your customer, and what myself and Tony outlined about trying to get in front of people and be face to face in order to develop relationships, because we all compete on relationships. Whether they use myself or Tony or Laura, they're going to, who do I know? Who knows me? Who knows my culture? Who knows the type of people I like to hire? And importantly, who knows the talent available in the marketplace? And they'll say, Laura knows that, Tony knows that, Stephen knows that. And how do you become that person that is going to be chosen, that knows those things? How do you have a relationship with your customer so you are the person chosen, and what are the things that you should be doing to reach that point?
Fantastic. So I'm going to move on to the last question now, because we're slightly behind time. So just for those on the call, we're going to move to questions for the panel after this next question. So please do throw your questions into the chat. I know some have already come through, but any of the questions you want to ask to the panel, throw them in the channel. I'm going to ask the last question, then we'll move on to your questions. So I'll throw this one to Tony, and this is something that certainly has come up as we spend all day, every day talking to agencies. This has been a big one, which is a lot of agencies have brought on more junior recruiters over the past few years who've never done business development. And a big process has been getting more experienced consultants to coach and train some of those junior recruiters. Is that something you've had to do in your agency, Tony? And like, what are some of the insights you can share in terms of getting your seniors to upskill and train the juniors?
Look, we've actually been fortunate. We haven't had to do a lot of that. We've tended to hire people with experience, thankfully. But in my prior role and prior business, we did a lot more of that. I will maybe pass to Stephen and Laura on this one, but I will make a couple of comments first. Firstly, I think what I've always tried to do is not rush the ramp up. I think sometimes we race people out into the market for them to be independent as quickly as possible. And then we realize they're failing, they're losing confidence, and we try and drag them back in. That does no one any favors, because they've lost their confidence. You're trying to rebuild them. So I actually think slow them out and play the long game, and get them focused on building a sustainable desk by focusing on talent first. So I've always got people to focus 60, 70% of their time in the first 2 or 3 months on talent. What does a good candidate look like? Where to find them? How to assess talent properly. So when you get your first role in, you're a shortlist as good as anyone else in the marketplace. The other thing we've done is recalibrate success for people, even if they're experienced and coming across to you from a competitor. Everyone takes a step backwards before they go forward, and even experienced consultants get impatient to hit the gross margin targets. We try and get them let go of that and say, look, gross margin's an outcome of goals. It's not a goal itself. So let's focus on working back to enjoy the journey of getting to those placements, if that makes sense. Because I think we focus too quickly on money, experienced or not. We end up getting them chasing the Hail Marys. They're chasing the roles or opportunities that maybe they shouldn't be chasing otherwise. So we actually take the pressure off them and slow them down, and we get them to get the fundamentals right, and we buddy people up a lot more. So they're going our meetings together and they're hearing colleagues talk, and they do, especially interviewing as well. I think it's really critical. You bring a new person to the team, you get them to interview alongside the rest of the team multiple times, so that you've calibrated what success or what good looks like in talent across that team. Because if they're going to truly collaborate, which to me is the power of an agency, and a good culture is actually working together for outcomes, not a bunch of individuals, then they've got to respect each other's opinion on talent so that they can actually pass that talent between them and be efficient. So spending a lot of time alongside each other in interviews really helps.
So I'll throw the same question to Laura and Stephen around the upskilling of more junior recruiters. I've also noticed someone in the chat mention the challenges around work from home policy for junior recruiters. So not only are we trying to upskill junior recruiters, but we've now got the added challenge of trying to do that in some cases remotely. Stephen, maybe I'll throw to you first. How Sharp and Carter are approaching this in terms of getting your more experienced recruiters to upskill juniors, and any other comments around how you've approached the work from home policy in that context of trying to do some of that training potentially remotely?
Yeah, I think Tony raised some great points around the patience required when you are starting out in recruitment. And, the rule of thumb that we have at Sharp and Carter is that for the first 12 to 24 months, you're going to make losses on our P&L. A recruiter will cost us about $20,000 a month to hire, and you're not going to bill more than that for the first 12 to 24 months. And then it's going to be 12 to 24 months where you'll start making profits and you'll recruit the losses that you accrued. And then it's, 2 to 4 years before you'll start making clear profit. So it takes a long time, and it's really important. And we find, as much as anything, for the best recruiters, we're trying to take pressure off people because the best recruiters put so much pressure on themselves. So just that's as much for leaders in recruitment. It's as much for the people starting in recruitment as it is for the leaders. We've invested a huge amount in training and development, James, to try and bring our juniors up to speed because as I said earlier, this is a skill. Business development is a skill lots of people haven't required over the past 2 years. And so we're investing a huge amount in our internal learning and development department and our leaders rolling out that learning and development to our junior people. Our work from home policy generally is it's up to the individual. Now, however, we say to our junior recruiters that it's in their interests to be in as much as possible because they are in a learning phase of their career. And they will learn, as human beings, we learn mostly through observation. So unless you're around others and seeing and hearing what they're doing, you won't, your ramp up period will be so much longer. Because if you're not observing, you will not be anywhere near as successful as quickly as if you're around others. Now, our leaders, therefore, need to be around for our juniors. So if you're a leader in our business, there's a requirement that you're in the office as much as possible because our junior people need to learn from you. And then everyone else comes into the office dependent upon their own circumstances. So that's the way we approach. Now, and one of the ongoing conversations that we're having with our people is there's a difference between what you want from a working from home perspective and what you need. And what we as human beings need is to be around other people. We're social animals. What you want might be to stay in your Ugg boots and not have to commute. But what you need is to be around others and to progress your career. So that's not a hard rule because we know it's what you'll need. You have to be in the office, but we have those sort of conversations to try and influence people to be around others from a cultural perspective and from a learning and development perspective as much as possible.
Fantastic. I've just realised we've actually only got 5 minutes left, so I'm going to very quickly move on to audience questions. So the first question I want to throw out from Paige is, how do you track your BD? We have overcomplicated spreadsheets. How often would you suggest touching base as different touch points to keep on their radar? So how are you tracking BD? And what are the number of touch points, which I think maybe as Laura mentioned earlier, you work on kind of 7 to 12 touch points. Anyone else got any insights you can share into how you're tracking BD activity?
I can talk about some of the additional stats that we've got within ours, if that's helpful. So in terms of those 7 to 12 touch points, you can do it manually. Like, we invest a lot in AI and technology within Frazer Tremble to help optimize how we do things. And we've trialed a couple of different systems along the way. And we use Job Adder as an ATS. That will give you a lot of different touch points and ways to track it for leaders. You can have different fields within there. So any email gets tracked to that, so you don't have to manually work that out. Other things that we've utilized is a platform called Sourcr. So you can automate what those touch points are. There's stopgaps within there that it's a phone call. At the end of the month, you can see what those metrics are, what's working, what's not working, and then kind of work backwards from there. So there's a lot of different AI tools and systems that we use to help us optimize that. And we've also invested in digital marketing. Had a wonderful digital marketing manager who's joined a couple of weeks ago to help those ebbs and flows of business development to bring more inbound leads and stuff as well. So our consultants can focus on delivering the work, basically. But yeah, Job Adder, Sourcr, all the metrics that you get within them, and I'm sure any ATS will be able to give you those stats and stuff as well.
And just a really quick follow-up, I can see Paige has asked, the 7 to 12 touch points over what period of time?
That can take a couple of months, and that's what I mean by playing the long game and just being really consistent with that along the way. Yeah.
Cool. On to the next question. I'd be interested to hear more about your nurture journey. When a client hasn't said yes, but haven't said no, how do you market to them and remain at the forefront of their mind for when they may be ready? Any strategies for nurturing clients that have not said yes yet from anyone?
I'll take a stab at this. I think there's an element of judgment in recruitment. Have they not said yes because they're wanting to be polite and they're never going to use you, or have they not said yes but they're close to saying yes? So that's a judgment. If it's a person that's you think your gut feel is they're close to saying yes, again, I would focus on how can you add value to their role. How can you add value to their business? And that might be market insights. It might be an article that you've read that you think would add value. It might be inviting them to an event. It might be to speak to them about a candidate that you think could be of interest. But just finding ways to add value to them rather than, could we catch up for another coffee? Could you give me more of your time? Could you tell me more about your business? Stop asking for things from them and start to try and work out ways to give to them.
Fantastic. We've got 2 minutes left. Final question. To anyone, what is your best advice to someone building a new desk in bringing on new clients? What has changed in this market?
I don't think much has changed at all. I just think you do the basics well. I think that's always been the case. I think you add value, you be patient, you play that long game, you invest in the candidates first before the clients, understand your marketplace, and constantly look at ways to add value. Be brave, be curious, go out and push yourself on colleagues. I think sometimes out of sight, out of mind, colleagues go, yeah, I'll take you out and see my clients. You can see how I do things, but then they get busy. So you've got to constantly niggle at your colleagues to go, hey, would you mind if I pop out and tag along and see how you do things? So I think as a consultant with less experience in any market, you've just got to keep putting your hand up, asking questions, asking for advice, asking to join your colleagues, and be brave and just try stuff.
Right, and with that, it takes us to pretty much bang on 12 o'clock. Thank you so much to everyone who joined today. There was almost 400 of you live on the call. And as I said, 900 will be receiving the recording. So fantastic response. And I just want to say a big thank you to everyone on our panel today for taking the time and sharing those insights. I know there was tons of questions we didn't get time to answer. I think we could have done 2 or 3 hours on this topic. So hopefully you all managed to take something away from today. Thank you all for the time, and we will see you all again soon.
Pleasure.
Thanks guys.
Everybody.
Have a good day.